My name is Shannon Williams, and I am the OCPD coach. And I thought it would make a lot of sense if I came on here and just shared my story. As you can see, my first video, I talked about just living in imperfection because having OCPD, I have struggled with perfection for as long as I remember. So that video, I actually had a bunch of planks on the floor and my walls were a lighter blue and I had my door panels off. And as you can see, I'm still in a very, very similar state as far as not having the panels up, not having my trim up, but I have actually completed painting my office and I've also finished paneling my entire wall. So by the time I shoot my next video, I will have shifted my desk around and cleared this space out. And hopefully you all will be able to see the wall that I built. And it was imperfect when I started and the office is still imperfect, but progress was made. So I think progression is something that should be rewarded. So I just wanted to come on here and reward myself by making another video. So this video, as I mentioned, is about my story, how I found out I had OCPD, and what I did once I found out I had OCPD. So as long as I can remember, I think I had to at least be I was in high school, so I would say I was in the 9th or 10th grade. I took art class every single year of high school, and I had the same art teacher every single year, and I also had the same art teacher back when I was in the 6th grade. And the way our art class worked is each morning we would have a warm-up. It'd be about 10 minutes to just draw something. And each week we would have an assignment of something that we had to do. I was always very talented artistically, and this was always something that I was told I was talented, and even just seeing the work that I did when I look back, it was pretty decent, especially for my age. And I would always try to make the best art in the classroom every single time. And it didn't matter if it was the 10-minute warm-up or if it was the week-long project, I always strive for perfection. And this was nice and all. You always want to have a student who works hard and gives it their all, but it became an issue because I never would finish the assignment. I would be working on the same project that it was supposed to be a time-boxed week-long project, and I'd be working on it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But my art teacher, I always thank God for my art teacher, and I actually just thanked him recently because of how gracious he was as a teacher for me, and he was the type of person I needed to make it to the level in life that I'm at now. But I actually used to have, he would talk to my mother during parent-teacher conferences, and he would tell her how I was the star student, star pupil, and I would never finish the assignments. But he would never fail me because of the level of detail that I would put into the assignments. It was just something that he just used to let it go on and say, okay, Shannon, this is the deadline, this is the deadline. And I never was able to meet the deadline because it was never perfect to me. And when I was younger, I didn't see this as an issue. I thought, hey, I need to get it done in the perfect way. And other people, they do their assignments, they would do it in the time box and it wouldn't be great, but they'd be done and then they'd be moving on. And I'd be working on projects for weeks at a time trying to perfect it. And that is the earliest sign that I can remember that specific aspect of my OCPD actually biting me in the butt. Or kind of biting me in the butt, because I still passed my classes, but it definitely was a struggle for me to finish assignments. And that was just something that I noticed as I got older was actually becoming an issue. As I mentioned, I had art classes for 4 years. And by the time I was in my 12th grade class, I wasn't even doing the normal homework assignments. I was doing assignments that were way beyond that. And I wanted to be the perfect student. So I tried my best to never get detention. I never wanted to get anything lower than a B. I was really, really hard on myself as a student. And this just plagued me throughout my entire life. It just kept plaguing me. So I just want to note a few things that, excuse me, it's as if when I talk too much, I have to take a deep breath, so give me a second. But yeah, I wanted to just notate a few other things that as I got older, I noticed about myself. Never knew it was OCPD, but looking back at it, it was OCPD. And I just think it's really interesting when I talk about a few of these things. So I actually moved this up to the top. I always look to automate things. And when I say automate, I love processes and I love lists. It's like as if I just got to write out the dictionary. I love structure. And I think I put automate things, but I think a better word here would be optimize things. I always love to optimize things. And I think about little things such as me going to Disney World and there's a ride called Dinosaur and you stand in a line, in a single file line, and then they file everybody into one big group, one big room. It's no structure, no order, and then file everybody back into a single file line. And every time I get on that ride, it drives me crazy, the fact that we get in a line just to get spread back out, just to get right back in the line. I just never understood that, and it always just gives me a lot of anxiety to the point where I actually would try to be the last person to go. I'd actually just let everybody else go, and I can be the last person because it takes so much energy for me to process. Do I go in front of this person? Do I go behind this person? It's a lady. Do I let the lady go? Oh, wait, this lady is with a family. Do I let the family go? This is an older person. I should let them go out of respect. Oh, I should go now. But if I go now, I'm probably going to be trampled by, I don't know. I don't even know where I was going there. But basically, that's how my head is. It just keeps going. It keeps going. It keeps going. So I actually look for these processes in a lot of different areas. Just in life, I'll be driving down the street and I'll think, hey, why do we only have one sound that a horn can make in the car? Why can it not communicate more efficiently? Why can't I say a friendly horn is, hey, go ahead? Or if I have an aggressive horn, it's like, hey, move out the way. And the horn actually talk or communicate, or we have some form of better communication to understand what a horn beep means, because horn beeps are just generic and you never know if it's to be aggressive, if it's to be generous, or if it's for alerting somebody that maybe their light is out. It just seems like an opportunity missed to optimize the process. So that's another area. Something else I mentioned, I always follow rules. So I hated getting detention. I never skipped school. I always showed up to class on time, if not early, as best as I could. I love being early. I hated being late, and I hated being the person who got there on time. I think it was when I was younger playing sports, my coach told me when I was playing basketball, he said, hey, if you are 15 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. So that was instilled in me young. And my fear of getting in trouble was instilled in me young. Very young, I used to get in trouble for if I messed up in 3rd or 4th grade, just doing dumb stuff. I'd get in trouble when it made sense for me to get in trouble. But I never wanted to get in trouble. Instead, what I didn't like the negative feedback that I would get, but I loved the positive feedback. Positive feedback really, really drove me. So when I would get good grades and I would get money or compensated or I get praised, I loved it. It felt so good that I wanted to continue. So then I started trying to keep straight A's, and keeping straight A's is something where it requires a lot of discipline and it can be very pressurous, but I started trying to keep straight A's from 6th grade up to the 8th grade, and then I kept all A's and B's in high school, and the pressure of trying to get a degree, a college degree, and getting a scholarship, all of that was in my head. So there were a lot of different aspects that really made me want to stick to following rules and made me want to not mess up, and that's what I put in here, is just fear of messing up. Also, being a young black man born in Detroit, and a lot of people in that area or in that situation might grow up, and I was in a single parent home. A lot of people in a situation like that, the mothers are a little bit harder on the boys because they don't want them to grow up and be criminals or just do things that would make them not proud, make them shameful. So I didn't want to bring shame on my mother. I didn't want to bring shame on my family. So I had a lot of pressure on me just in that situation. So all of these things did coincide with each other, and it all formulated this OCPD in me. And I also believe my mother might suffer from some of it from her parents being strict. So it's really interesting when you go back and you start to kind of pull the layers back and say, hey, this kind of goes back to my childhood. This happened in my childhood, but I'm rambling and I do that a lot. So let me move on. Another thing was that I hated spending money on myself. Still to this day. I'm gonna make another video about this, but Yesterday, my wife, I've been telling her I wanted a PlayStation 5. I wanted the Spider-Man game because Spider-Man is the only game I love to play on any console. And I wanted to get a PlayStation 5, but I didn't want to spend money on myself. It's a $500 console plus the game, and I didn't want to spend it on myself. Yet, I was willing to give that money, I'm not going to say exactly how much, but give a good amount of money to some friends, some church friends, some people that we just run into, just helping people weeks ago. And it was so much more fulfilling. Me giving money to other people feels good. Me spending money on myself feels dirty. And I'm not 100% sure. That's another thing. When I was young, I was told where there's waste, there's haste. And when I would get money, I'd be told, don't spend all your money, keep your money, which is a good principle. But with OCPD, what I noticed is that a lot of us, we turn the intensity up on a lot of these things and make them much more severe much more, I think that was the word, much more intense. They're just intense. And I took saving money to mean if I don't want to be homeless, if I don't want to, when I'm old, have to depend on my children, if I don't want to be in a certain situation and I want to be able to continue to provide for my family, I actually need to not spend money on myself. And I've been able to have the delayed gratification for a long time. I have had a blessed life, and I continue to say I'm a very blessed individual, and God has continued to just provide and look after my family and myself and give me grace in life. And one of the things that I think is interesting is the fact that if I want something, I can talk myself out of not wanting it. It's really interesting. So the fact that I wanted the PlayStation 5 so bad, I knew I didn't want to spend the money on it. I talked myself out of wanting it. I was like, it's all right. It's just a video game, or the video game isn't worth it. I'll play it for 2 days and throw it out. Or, I can spend that money on renovating my upstairs, and that's more important. Maybe I can help get my mortgage, something knocked off my mortgage. I instantly just start trying to convince myself not to enjoy money or spending money on myself. And it's really, really interesting. And I still deal with this, but I have now started developing different mechanisms to help me with this. And also my wife being an amazing support system, she helps me through this. But yeah, I deal with that. So I hate spending money on myself. And I actually have one that ties into spending money on myself, which is I put on here, I wore old beat up clothes without caring. And this is interesting. So I actually can go without buying clothes for an entire year. Like at least an entire year, because I never think clothes are that important. So I used to wear a lot of just white plain t-shirts, and I would wear them. They would be clean. I would always wash them. But as you know, shirts get stained and they just don't look as crisp, as fresh. And I just wear basketball shorts and flip-flops every single day. And I had a good job. I had a job that was paying me enough to live in a decent apartment when I was in Michigan, and I had different benefits, but it really made it where I thought in my head, I don't need to buy clothes. I don't need to buy any of this stuff. And you don't always need to buy clothes, but when it gets to the point where you can afford to upgrade your clothes, and I'm not saying name brand, like this is a Target shirt, and I love it. But I'm saying that you can buy clothes that do look good and make you feel good. I definitely think you should make sure you have clothes available that you can feel good in and just throw on. So that's something that, again, my wife has been helping me work through, but I also have some strategies on this because this goes all the way back to the hoarding of money. That's really what it is. We hate spending money on ourselves, and I thought it was just hoarding money for in case we need it, but I'm able to give to people. So I'm not sure if that's more of the religion side of me that kind of combats the OCPD side of me there, but it's really interesting that we hoard money for emergencies. We hoard old clothes. The fact that I still have those clothes because I'm like, hey, I'm using them, or I might need them in the future. Let me just keep them. And now it becomes more dangerous because with me doing renovations on my home, like, hey, I can keep these old beat up shoes, this old beat up shirt, because I'm just gonna use it to renovate. And I'll throw those clothes on, and then I wind up throwing something different on anyways. And those clothes, I don't even know they exist anymore. So it's really something you have to be mindful of. And what I wanted to work on in my OCPD rule book I'm working on is I want to add something along the lines of making items a rotating door. So when you bring an item in, you try to get rid of something old that you're not using anymore. based on how many items you have like 5 items, you might not have to do it. But if you have X amount of items and you just have things that haven't been worn or aren't getting used, get rid of stuff when you bring new stuff in. I think that'll help you keep your home from getting cluttered, and it'll also help you not only stay, as I mentioned, feeling good, feeling clean, but also make it where you don't even have the temptation to have on old clothes, old worn out clothes, or old things that don't work, because you have new things to wear. So that's something I added as well. So that's a big one. And that also ties into vacations. I always hated vacations. I like working. I'm a workaholic, and I used to be proud of that. Now I'm not as proud, because now it works in some cases, but some cases it's uncontrollable. And it's hard to feel happiness when you are just so consumed with wanting to work. So I definitely think it's a blessing and a curse. You can use it to your advantage, but if you don't know how to tame it, it can run wild on you, and you definitely want to figure out ways to combat that workaholic mentality that you might have. I had to jump out because my books just got here. I got me some additional resources, some additional OCPD rule books. I mean, not rule books, OCPD books. Now I'm kind of geeked for these. I'm starting to really enjoy reading more. Might just be getting a little older. I'm also enjoying, I watch the news all of a sudden, and I'm not really sure what that's about. But anyways, I'm rambling. So the next thing that I actually wanted to talk about was I mentioned I hate vacations, I hated not being able to work, which was the workaholic in me. And something that actually paired up with this was my strive for perfection that I mentioned in the assignment. And that was good, to strive for perfection or strive for excellence. That's what you should do, is strive for excellence. But I actually had it where I could not stop working on homework assignments until they were perfect. I would never submit it. And then it became more of an issue with work when I would be working on games, because I was a game developer. I would spend years working on games and never release them, or months working on games and never release them, and spend money on them and never release them. And the reason why I never released them is because they were never perfect to me. I never liked it. I would always think, this game isn't fun, nobody's going to want to play it. And that was, as I mentioned, that was a big issue, because I stopped so many projects that I probably could have had a little bit of success on and gained more momentum and confidence, but I shut it down myself. So that was another thing I dealt with. And something that paired up with that was, as I mentioned, I would jump from project to project. So one day I was trying to do YouTube as a nerd character where I had glasses and I was dancing and it was acting. I had another thing where I was Scrappy D Hype, and I was just a YouTube personality like everyone else who vlogged, and I did reaction videos and things like that. I did skits, and then that didn't work out too well. After a while, I didn't like it, so I started doing other things, like I mentioned, video games, and I did a channel where I was playing horror games because I was interested in it at the time, but it was too much maintenance and I didn't see it going anywhere. And that's another thing that I have on here that paired up with it was I actually would compare myself to people who were at the highest level of a field, which is insane. And I hope if you're listening to this and you do this, I want you to really pay close attention to this. I'm gonna take a breath before I say this because it's gonna get you. So think about million and billion dollar companies, corporations like Disney, Twitter, X, Facebook, Sony, Microsoft. These are some companies that have hundreds, if not thousands, of people. So not just engineers, but all of the different people in the team that are working to hit a goal or release a project or a product. And on top of that, they have all of the money I mentioned, and they have budgets for marketing the item or doing research for the audience for the item or testing the item out and putting it out in front of people, or just paying the best people in the field to do a job, paying for servers, paying for different technology, different softwares. These companies are these huge companies, and they have these huge teams and all of these resources. Yet, I will compare my work to their work because I don't know, it might have been ego because I would think, I will look at something and say, I could build that. And I would have an expectation of what it's going to look like in my head, and it would look so amazing. And I had all the bells and whistles and everything. It was better than that $1 Million Companies project they made, plus some, because I had new ideas on things that they should have done better. And by the time I worked on it for about 5 months to a year, I started realizing this is a lot harder than it seems. And there's no way that this is going to be comparable to these different industry giants that I'm trying to compare myself to. And even with something like YouTube, where people can just hit YouTube instantly and hit millions of followers, get lucky or get really, really skilled or have a niche audience that is just amazing. But I actually would have the expectation that I'm going to make a YouTube video and my channel is going to blow up by next week. And that would be realistically in my head and planning in my head. And I think that ties into another OCPD thing we have that I've been observing with individuals is that our expectations are unrealistic, and most of the time they're unachievable. And the third one that I have is a lot of times they are undefined. And when I say undefined, I mean that we have a general idea for how something should be or how we think we want something to go exactly as planned. And we might not have all of the exact criteria that needs to be hit to get to that goal, which then makes it hard once we want to delegate it to someone to do it for us. We don't even know how to put into words what we actually want. It's just hitting me right now. That's been an issue that I've had with delegating. I'm transitioning over to this now, but delegation has always been something that I had a hard time with, and I would always try it. I would always try to delegate. I would always try to have people come in and I pay them what I could or spend time with them, but they would either, a lot of times they wouldn't want to work with me back then. It might have been because I wasn't paying them enough. I didn't have much, but might have been because I wasn't paying them enough. But I think a lot of times people didn't want to work with me because I didn't know what I wanted. And I thought I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know how to get what was in my head to them to explain it. So a lot of times when people would create things for me, I actually would go in and make tweaks to what they made because I didn't like it. It wasn't to my liking. And it's really, really interesting. This is really interesting to me because then you get in the habit of doing that so often that you convince yourself that I might as well not delegate. I might as well do it myself if I'm going to have to go after somebody and do it myself anyways. You start to really get that unhealthy mindset going, and that's crazy. I used to do this in school. We would have school assignments, and I would volunteer to do the entire project by myself because it was just easier to me. I knew what I needed. I had a vision, and I could get somewhat there. And it never would come out exactly how I wanted because that time box, but I would be proud of my work, and it would be something creative and unique and cool, or it'd be something that was very detailed or very, a lot of hard work, and we would normally get a good grade and people would enjoy it. So I started embracing that more and more, and I just kept doing it. And it's just now hitting me how unhealthy that was doing it as a young student, and how that impacts me, how that possibly impacted me in my adulthood when I tried to work with people. And I've had times where I've worked with people, but it's only been if I trusted that person 100%. And the way I would trust the person 100% is that they knew they had more knowledge than me, and they had more experience, and they were better than me. Because as I mentioned, a lot of ego is at play with OCPD, it seems, where we think we can do everything, we think we can do it perfectly and better than anyone. But when somebody is definitively and objectively better than you at something, I think we can fall, because we don't want to not be the best, we take a step back and say, all right, you got it, chief. And I think that's what happens, because I have had coworkers where they were amazing at art And as much as I love to do art, I was like, hey, I won't do a better job than you will. So you got it and you own it. And I might be a little annoying with some of the feedback I might give or ideas I have, because I got a lot of ideas to get out of my head, but I did trust them. I always trusted them to make the best out of whatever the project was. But that's just interesting. I went on a tangent because just seeing how all of these things just connect, all these dots just connect. And as I mentioned, I have strategies for a lot of these things, but as a coach, as an OCPD coach, behavioral coach, I actually focus on not the cause of it, because that's more down the lines of therapy and counseling. I actually try to figure out what can we do now that we have the issues, and now that we know what your goals are, how can we help you hit these goals? What does that take? So I don't take the time to really dig in and say what caused this and what was the trajectory of your life had you, what would have been if you had done this different. I don't do that as much. I might ask those questions occasionally just to see where someone's head is if we are there. But most of the time it's, okay, we have it, you have OCPD or you have OCPD-like traits. Let's nip this in the bud and figure out what we can do to help you out. And me having OCPD, I have a lot of strategies that I have done in my life that I like to help people share it with them. And it's surprising to me sometimes how many people are not actually aware of a lot of these strategies. It's almost as if the experience I've had in my life and the work world and different projects that I failed at, because I tried so many things over the amount of time that I have been alive, that I have tried things and failed so many times that I know what didn't work. And then I was able to take the things that didn't work away from the list of potential things to do and then start implementing some new things. And then I started figuring out what did work. And I think that's why I just had another follow-up with one of my clients, and he said, when he talks to me, I mentioned something similar before, but I'm actually going to pull up verbatim what he told me because it was really interesting. But he did tell me that when he talks to me, he said, Shannon speaks my language regarding OCPD. And he says, when I come up with something, people respond well to it. That was basically what he said. The things that I was coming up with, the different strategies that popped in my head, or just the on-demand stuff that I would come up with for him, they're working for him, and he's seeing improvements. And I think that's what I'm here to do, is really help people with OCPD, not as a therapist, but as a coach. Like, now that we know we have these issues, let's see how we can fix them. Let's see how we can move forward, because you can use your OCPD to your advantage. And I will be talking about a couple of the strengths a little later in this video, but let me just finish this out first. So another thing that I actually had, as I mentioned, from jumping from project to project to project, was I had highly doubted my decisions. Like, my indecision was horrible. I wouldn't know what the best thing to work on was. And even when I started coaching, this is when I really improved on my spiritual walk. But when I started coaching, I was really confused because I was in the midst of two projects that I thought were the ones. Like, I spent money, I spent time. I thought I had a noble goal. And I met with my therapist and talked it out with her, and I shared with her the things that I've been doing, because I've always been coaching or counseling or doing things like that since I was a kid. I was always the person who, when my friend would be disrespectful to the mother, I would pull him to the side. This is like 8-year-old me. And I tell him, dude, you can't talk to your mom like that. You know, don't talk to your mother like that. Don't, because she was a good mother. I told him. And my brothers, their mother would call me and ask if I could talk to them. So I've always been in a counseling or a mentor or teaching. I'll say that. That's a better word. I've always been in a teaching mindset, state of mind, whatever you want to call it, to help individuals. And when I talked to my therapist about some of the things that I've been doing when I went back to visit family, she was actually the one who recommended me going to coaching. And I had a lot of different people they kept telling me I should go into counseling, therapy, or mental health, the mental health realm in some capacity. And I never knew where I would fit. And even when she told me I would be a coach, she didn't say OCPD coach. She said coach. And I had to I did a lot of research. So something with OCPD people, we want to we want to know stuff. We love knowledge. Like knowledge is, I'm not gonna say that, but knowledge is a huge hit of dopamine for us. That's the best way to put it. And I went home and I started looking up all the different types of coaching and what you need to do to become a coach and what areas of coaching made the most sense. And then I realized none of these work for me. I didn't want to be a relationship coach. I didn't want to be addiction coach or divorce coach or sex coach. I didn't want to be those. I didn't want to be a general life coach where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to help you turn your life around, get your life on track and make you make six figures. I don't think that's what I was called to do. But once I started looking into behavioral coaching and I started to realize a lot of my strategies I've been doing for OCPD, I actually was teaching myself some of this stuff at home. Most of it was just problem solving. And I realized quickly that I needed to focus on other people with OCPD because I didn't have anyone to really go to. OCPD it sucks because it was hard for me. I couldn't find an OCPD therapist. I looked them up in Florida and they didn't exist. What did pop up a lot was OCD. And I know they say they kind of go hand in hand sometimes, but having an OCPD brain versus any other brain really is a really interesting dynamic. It's not like I can get my therapist to just think like me or understand me or get me and say, hey, I know exactly what you're talking about. That has only happened to me when I've spoken to people with OCPD. So with us, and it's like it's as I mentioned, when we know somebody is an expert at something, we tend to back off and let them do it. But I think in my therapy, I was more focused on me problem solving because I think I was the OCPD expert, being that I had it my whole life. I was the OCPD expert in my life. It was me because I lived it. I dealt with it. I had to troubleshoot. I had to navigate. And following up on this, I didn't even know I had OCPD until I think about 6 or 7 months ago. I didn't even know it was a thing until 9 or 10 months ago. But I thought it was OCD because of videos and knowledge. And then it was Dr. K. Shout out to Healthy Gamer GG. I love that channel and I actually learned a lot from him. But he mentions that there is OCD and there's something called OCPD, and a lot of people who have OCPD mistake it for OCD. And I was watching with my wife. I'm like, what is OCPD? And he started describing it. And I was like, wait a minute. That's what I have. And I tried to do my best to research as many people and find a lot of knowledge. I think Eden V on YouTube was a huge person. I used to watch a lot of her videos when I first heard about it. And I also think she's the one who got me into the OCPD support group. I think she was the one who mentioned it possibly on Facebook. But whatever the case, that's when it started clicking. Like, I think I have this. And I started, when I saw the traits, one thing about people with OCPD, and this is one of our strengths, we are problem solvers. Once we know what the problem is, we try our best to come up with rules, strategies, processes, anything we can to solve and fix the problem. And that is exactly what I did. Once I found out it was OCPD, or I believe it was OCPD, I started looking at every single trait that I had, and mainly the ones related to productivity, because that was the biggest issue that I was struggling in, it seemed like, which links back to perfectionism. But all of that was what I wanted to focus on, and I started doing different strategies, such as I started using project management tools that are used in industries like big companies like JIRA. So I used JIRA and actually started making my life an organized 2-week sprint where I would put tasks of things I want to work on, and every single idea I had, I would document it, and I would create all these different projects in JIRA so I knew what project I wanted to work on at any point in time. I would create what you call a backlog, which is just a list of things that you need to do at some point. You don't know when you'll do them. And then I created multiple sprints, and I actually started putting my work into the sprints. And that was helping me with staying organized. Then ChatGPT popped up and came out the blue. And it was as if I had another brain to bounce ideas off of whenever I had an idea, which is something that with having OCPD, we have, as I mentioned, horrible indecision. We are really hard with making decisions because for me, you never want to make the wrong decision. So I think we fear shame. I think that's what it is. I think I fear shame. And if I make the wrong decision and all these different things cascade into negative side effects, I will have shame in my decision. So we always try to make the best decision or make the most optimized or efficient decision for our life so that we can have great results. So that indecision that I suffer from, I actually started taking it to ChatGPT and saying, hey, this is an idea I have. What do you think? I would literally write the idea out and say, what do you think? And the AI software would reply back to me with what it thought, and I would say, what would you do to make it better? And it would give me ideas to make it better. And I would keep pushing it, and keep molding and shaping it to the point where it really seemed like this AI was the expert, I was the consultant, and we were collaborating to make something unique, something cool, something useful. You could tell it to do a market audience, target audience for the work that you're doing. And I had to do target audience. I said, is the demand for this idea there? Is the how many sales do I need to make to hit X amount of money? It was a lot of different things involved with projects and helping you make better decisions. And even retirement, I try to save for retirement, and I made sure I put that in the ChatGPT, and I said, hey, I want to have X amount of thousand before I hit 30 in my retirement account. How much more do I need to put? I have this much. How much more do I need to put before I will be there? And they gave you an estimate, and it's very advanced. And I recommend, if you have problems with indecision, if you have problems where you have too many ideas, you don't know which idea might be worth pursuing. If you have ideas if you have issues where you have an idea and it's very, very undefined and you need more definition, you need to start using these AI services that are free right now. Start using them now while they are free and maximize them, because what it'll do is help you, like it did for me, help build your confidence up. And as your confidence grows, you start being able to take on bigger tasks and accomplish more, and you have more happiness just in life because you're confident. And that's something that I definitely recommend all people who are dealing with these issues. You need to do it. Just try to make yourself happy and try to see where you can use tools that are available to you for your benefit. And we suck at delegating a lot of times, but delegating to an artificial intelligent system that knows much more than we ever will know was the perfect person to delegate for me. And then I mentioned it's free. So again, I recommend it. I might put the link in the bio, actually. Yeah, I will. Not in the bio. I'll put the link in the description for you all for ChatGPT and also JIRA. Just some resources, as I mentioned, just some things that have helped me out. So yeah, that was imposter syndrome. And actually, that wasn't imposter syndrome. Now I'm talking about imposter syndrome. So that leads me to my next area, which is imposter syndrome. I actually dealt with this a lot, especially based on our decision making, where you never think you're making the right decision, but I never felt qualified to do anything. And it's ironic, I'm gonna try to stay on this point, but I think I was on an entire different track when I started talking about ChatGPT, JIRA, becoming a coach. I was talking about something completely different. And I have no idea what it is, but it's okay. Whatever it is, if it's important, I'm making another video. So y'all bear with me. I literally went to sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning yesterday and got back up at 7 this morning for church because I was trying to get this done. So yeah, my apologies. I think I was talking about us being problem solvers though. But yeah, we are problem solvers. We try to solve problems and we'll figure things out. But let me get back to the imposter syndrome. So yeah, I've never felt qualified for jobs that I've had. And I think it all comes down to the perfectionism, because I'm holding myself to an unrealistic and undefined standard. And this is crazy that undefined thing that I mentioned when I talked about expectations, that undefined issue is really, really, is really crazy when you think like I'm really trying to focus on helping my clients who suffer from perfectionism issues. I'm really trying to help them deal with their expectations that they have in life in two ways. I want them to look at what they believe. So I'm actually going on two different topics, but let me focus on the expectation. So delegation, as I mentioned, is very hard for us because of our expectation issues. But what I recommend doing is if you want to delegate something and you want to try to get back into delegating things to people and you trust the people that you're delegating things to, and you don't want to be a micromanager or somebody who comes in and just redoes everything, you should create two lists. So first of all, you want to understand what you're actually asking the person to do. Right, we need to know what we're asking the person to do clearly so that we can tell the person what it is. So let's say if it is, I want my son to clean the kitchen. So if I want my son to clean the kitchen, what I recommend you do, and I'm actually going to, I think I'm going to share my screen for a second. So bear with me. I think I am going to share my screen and give an example of just what I'm talking about, right? So let's go here and we will say, give me a second. I want you all to play some Jeopardy music in your head while you wait. Doop, 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 doop. All right, here we go. So let me just go ahead and pull up. Oh, wait a minute. I apologize. You know, I completely forgot that I am on QuickTime. And I don't think there is a way for me to just share my screen on QuickTime. But that's okay. What I'll do is just explain it to you and it'll be all right. So yeah, QuickTime doesn't allow me to just share my screen in the middle of a video, sadly. That's what I was planning on doing. I forgot I wasn't on Zoom. My brain is mush. But what I actually recommend you do is you come up with the task. So let's say if it's cleaning the kitchen. You create an MVP list. So it's on the minimum viable product. So that is every single thing that needs to be hit for you to consider this task done. And you go through that list. So if it's cleaning the kitchen, I'm actually going to just start typing on the side, even though you can't see. I'll say cleaning the kitchen. And the MVP for cleaning the kitchen would be dishes are washed, stove is wiped, floor is swept, and mopped, right? That's my MVP. Then I want you to create another list, and this list will be your expectations. So in this case, I actually think that the expectations will be nice to haves, right? So we'll make another list, and this will be expectations or nice to haves. And these should be two lists. Don't cheat yourself and make this one list of both of the same thing. Nice to haves. So nice to haves would be, we would say, windows are wiped. We will say dishwasher is empty, and we will say sink is 100% dry. We'll add one more. We'll say that no dishes are visible. And you all can't see this, but I have two lists here. Now, with somebody with OCPD, in our head, if we have not written a lot of this stuff out, in our head, our expectation for what somebody is going to do would actually be what I have the nice to haves. Crazy, right? Our expectation for me, a lot of times is the nice to haves. I expect the MVPs should be automatic. The dishes should be washed, the stove should be wiped, the floor should be swept and mopped. But in my head, I also think that the windows should be wiped, the dishwasher is empty, sink is 100% dry, and no dishes are visible. It should be as if nobody lived there. I think a lot of us suffer from the fact that we don't know how to actually put our requests or expectations into words. So when I would say, could you clean the kitchen for me? We are already on two different channels or wavelengths, because you're thinking, okay, I'm doing the MVP. If I wash the dishes, if I wipe the stove, if I sweep and mop the floors, cool, kitchen clean. And I'm thinking, no, I want the whole 9 yards. So I think we actually suffer from this a lot with delegation. And we try to tell people what we want or what we need, and we don't do it in a way where it is very, very clear. And I would actually say with something like this, you should really take your time on it, because what you don't want to do is you give somebody the expectation list and they don't hit the expectations, or I mean they do hit the expectations, and then you have additional expectations that you didn't account for, because that's not fair. And I've done this a lot, where I will give a list of what I think I want, or I think I'm explaining it clearly, and the person will do it, and I actually like, nah, actually I need something different, or I need more than that. And we actually would get upset to the point where we just say, okay, I'll just do it myself and won't have them do it. But the issue is not always that it's that person's fault. Sometimes on OCPD, it's your fault. If we don't communicate clearly, how can we ever expect for people to really understand what's going on in our heads? So that's an exercise, and I'm mentioning this right now. This is not always the case. Sometimes you will clearly explain what you want somebody to do and how you want them to do it, and they won't do it. And that's okay. Sometimes people are not, first of all, none of us are perfect. And sometimes some of us don't hit expectations. We don't always hit expectations. And that's another thing we need to understand, is that we aren't perfect. We won't always hit expectations. And the same way we might have these expectations for other people might have their own expectations for us. And we might not be hitting their bare minimum expectations. We might think we are, and we're hitting something else. So that's something to be mindful of. I definitely don't want us to get into a habit or continue this habit of holding people to unrealistic expectations, including ourselves. And that was another thing I had that I mentioned, was with me comparing myself to these $1 million companies. I was holding myself to an unrealistic, undefined expectation. What I needed to do was go in, list out what I actually needed done, and then list things that would have been nice to have, and then see how much effort it would take to get the things done, like all of them. Then I would have had a better picture of what I could realistically do, and go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, maybe I need to downsize on this project and do something a little bit different. So that was an exercise. Another thing I would recommend with this exercise, I just came up with this, but if you do ask somebody, if you do delegate it to somebody, also go back after they're done and see if they hit the MVP, and see if they hit the expectation. If you only give them the MVP and they hit it, I think you should definitely congratulate them and say, thank you for doing what I asked or what I needed from you, and continue trying to work on giving those expectations clear. If they go above and beyond and do your nice to haves, or as I like to call it, our expectations, you should really, 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 really be appreciative. And try not to find areas to critique and try to give all this feedback and all this. Try to just really appreciate it, because they didn't have to go that far. They didn't have to go and meet your expectations. And I think a lot of times we get in the habit of thinking that we are entitled to people having to meet our expectations. And we are not. We aren't entitled to that. People doing the MVP is more than enough. I honestly think that. So I think we need to just work on making sure our expectations are realistic. See if people are hitting our expectations. If people are hitting our expectations, be gracious. And when we are gracious and we continue these habits, I think we'll have better communication skills when it comes to delegation. But I also think we'll get more confident, because we'll say, I'm starting to see, once I give you a task and I'm clearly explaining it, you're able to hit the nail right on the head. Because OCPD people, we are really, really rigid with a lot of these If we set rules and we set expectations and we set boundaries, we want them to be hit. But we can't do it to the point where it's impacting our relationships negatively. We can't. It's not fair to anybody. It's not fair to the person you're doing it to. And as I mentioned, it's not fair to yourself. I've been talking about that for a long time though, and I need to just make a separate video about all of these topics because I have a lot of thoughts and strategies to help out with them. But yeah, I mentioned imposter syndrome being a big thing. And as I mentioned, I'm a software engineer now. I've been a software engineer for 3 years, and I slipped into this role. I was not a software engineer. I was a video game developer. Self-taught, by the way. I self-taught myself everything that I know for the most part. I just spend a lot of time researching, which is at college, that's really what's happening. Like you have a professor up there, the professor teaches you stuff, and most of the time you have to go back home and research more on the topic, and then you have to do tests or assessments to gauge your knowledge and see if you actually retained it. I'm the type of person where I go do my own research, and the way I test things is through application. So I'll actually take what I learned and try it out and see if it works, see if it doesn't. And that's the only way I've ever really been able to learn. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I have to get my hands in there. So with the imposter syndrome, I slipped into a software engineer position by mistake. I actually was working at Disney World. COVID happened, everything got shut down, and I lost that job as a game developer. And somebody put in a great word for me for an internship for being a software engineer. And I'm very transparent. I told the team, I said, hey, I've never been a software engineer, but I'm a learner. And if you have a task that you need done, I'll figure out how to get it accomplished. And they gave me a shot. You know, as I mentioned, very blessed. They gave me a shot, and I learned on the job. A lot of it I learned on the job and learned at home, applying different techniques, trying different things. And it actually gave me a lot of imposter syndrome. Even I think I'm just now starting to get out of it this past year. But the first 2 years, it was a lot because the work we were doing, we were actually supporting other developers. So I'm trying to make sure I'm meeting their expectations while meeting my team's expectations while not being too hard on myself. And I know I don't have a lot of knowledge. But once I started understanding what my superpower was, because this is another thing I have on here, and actually it's my last bullet point for things that I had that made me realize I had OCPD. But compliments, I would always get compliments. No matter where I was working or what I was working on, I would get compliments. People would like things, and they never felt legit. It always seemed like people were, what is the word I'm looking for? You know the word I'm looking for, but there's a word for when people just don't really tell you the truth and they just give you a compliment to blow smoke up your butt. And I used to think that was happening. I used to think people are only saying this because I'm a black person in this realm, or people are only saying this, but da-da-da. I will always discredit my positive feedback that I would receive. And I would obsess over the negative feedback. I hate criticism to this day. It's something that really, it gets to me where I have to go in my brain and say, hey, chill out. And I'm still working on that. But I definitely think that I never thought compliments were legit. And it wasn't until I started reaching out to my leaders and my directors, and I would ask them, just honest opinion. How am I doing? Am I hitting the goals that you want me to hit? Am I where you expect me to be? And they would say, yeah. But it was when I started asking, why did you hire me? Why did you want me on the team? What is my role? What do I do to help the team? And most of them would tell me, you are scrappy. I got the term, you are scrappy one time. And he said, you figure things out. And it's always room on the team for somebody who figures stuff out and proactively figure stuff out without us always having to ask them to figure it out. And I got that again and again and again. So I started to realize my role, which was I need to be the person who problem solves. So if you have OCPD and you are dealing with imposter syndrome, I would recommend a couple things. I actually recommend you, try to get as much knowledge about whatever topic it is that you have the imposter syndrome about. So if you are, let's say, in medicine, do as much research as you can about medicine. Just watch interviews and people talking about what it's like in medicine, the different forms of medicine, Google medicine, read books, do whatever you have to do, work with ChatGPT, try to schedule, see if you can meet with people who are in that, who worked in that field or are retired from the field and just get knowledge from them. It's so many things you can do to get knowledge, but get knowledge. That's the number one thing, because a lot of times imposter syndrome can be legit. You might not be ready for a role, and that's okay. But the only way it goes away is, or starts to kind of subside, is that you start getting comfortable with that knowledge. Another thing, and this is something that you can't always control, but it definitely helps. Identify your role in whatever it is that you are doing. So if you're working a job, they hired you for a reason. They can hire a ton of other people in the world. They hired you for a reason. If you're working at a job, speak to your leader or whatever it is, director, coach, mentor. Ask them, what can I be doing better to accentuate the qualities that I bring to the team, to really make sure I'm bringing as much value to the team as possible. And ask, why did you hire me? That's always a question I love to ask. It's interesting because it helps you for the future, but I always ask, why did you hire me? What was the one thing that made you hire me? So always just try to see where you can add value to the team. Another thing with imposter syndrome is, it kind of goes back to what I mentioned about the comparing myself to $1 million companies. I would definitely say you have to set expectations for what you in your current role are able to do, and set expectations or get the expectations of what you in your role are expected to do. So, and what I mean by this is, if you're a junior engineer, a junior software engineer, you have a job description, and your job description details everything they expect you to do. A lot of times, instead of comparing yourself to the job description, you get on a team with senior engineers and principal engineers, and you start comparing your worth or what you can do to them. And they, first of all, are getting paid on a different scale than you, so you don't even really want to do the work that they're doing without making that money. But another thing is, they might have years and years and years of experience on you, and they might know different things, and they might have different ways of learning, and that's 100% okay. But until you can have your expectations lined up with the expectations that people are actually wanting you to bring to the table, you're going to have a mixed match there. And is it mixed match or mismatch? I think it's mismatch, but yeah, it's mismatch. But if you do actually have it where you don't have the knowledge, so let's say that you have the job description and you aren't able to hit the goals, that's when I recommend that you really just go get the knowledge. Ask if they have training courses that you can take. Ask if they'll pay for you to go back to school. Whatever it is, if that's somewhere you want to stay, just try to get the knowledge. All right, this is very, very long-winded, but I hope this helps people. Like, I really do hope it helps people. First of all, say, hey, I can relate to that person. Second of all, I hope you could probably take some of these strategies and apply them. Something I did want to talk about now really briefly is, of course, this is the brief part, but our strengths. So I mentioned that we probably have more strengths than we realize, but a few of the strengths that I've realized have helped me out, as I mentioned a lot, was problem solving. The ability to research something and obsess over something until I figure it out is a huge, huge thing that has helped me land jobs where I've made money that I never in my life thought I'd be able to make, or never even knew how you would make it. I've met people that I never knew I'd be able to meet. I've been able to speak at panels that I never thought I'd get the opportunity to speak at. Just continue to been able to be blessings also for other people. Even this wall that I've been working on, I don't want to show because I got too much junk over here right now. Actually, perfect. I keep fighting myself. But as you can see, I actually did my wall over here, and some additional paint is drying. But that's something I taught myself. Taught myself how to do it. Taught myself how to do floors, remodel the bathroom. All of those things build your confidence. So when I first switched toilets out, once I did the floors, I was like, I can replace the toilet. I replace the toilet. I can replace the sink. I replace the sink. I can replace the shower. I replace the shower. I can build an accent wall. It just compounds the confidence. So you always want to challenge yourself, especially at home, to be a problem solver. Like, always try to solve problems and see where you can learn things. Another thing I have is hard working. Like we are very, very hard working to the points of times where we overwork ourselves and burn out, and that's not what you want to do. This is very interesting to even give feedback here on how you can use it as a strength, because hard work in itself is just a positive trait. But I think you just need to build structure. I think that's what's helped me. When I say build structure, using tools like JIRA, where I have project management, where I can see every task that I'm working on at any point in time. I can go in and I can say, hey, this is what I want to work on in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from now. Having everything visible allows me to see how much work I have coming down the pipeline, but also allows me to see how much work I've done. In addition to this, I think, so that's something that helps you structure your work, like just structure the work you need to do. On top of this, I think having some form of daily cadence or weekly cadence or something where you actually spend time just with yourself, enjoying your family. So what I've started adopting is every Sunday we go to church now. So that we know I'm not working. I'm there, with my family, with God. And then every other Saturday, if not every Saturday, but every other Saturday, we go do something as a family. So if that's just going out to eat, if that's going to an amusement park, if that's going to the park, or just going to Target, just going to Home Depot, or whatever it is, we just try to get out. I did a workshop with my son at Home Depot a couple weeks ago where he got to build a wooden airplane. So it's always something that you can do, is just try to build time in for you to just have relaxation time, because we always want to work on stuff like all the time. We want to keep working, and you burn yourself out, and then you stop enjoying life, and then you start getting frugal with money because you don't want to spend it because you worked so hard to get it. It's just a cycle that just does not stop. So since the cycle doesn't stop, you need to try to interject things into that cycle that disrupt the work, that allow you to be at peace. So technically this is work for me, because this is for the OCPD Coach YouTube channel. But because I'm bending and I'm talking and I'm really just enjoying myself, it's less work for me and it's more fun. But after I'm done with this, I'm going to have real fun, because I'm going to open that PlayStation 5 and play Spider-Man since I'm done with my coaching sessions today, and my clients are all doing well, and I'll have my phone open if they need me. But you have to build that time in for yourself. Another strength is that we are very, very, very organized people, and sometimes this can be a fault where we are over organized and we have too many levels into documents and folders, and we just do a lot. We do a lot. OCPD people do the most. I'm not gonna lie to you, but what I recommend here is creating a structure around your organization to really maximize this. So if you are going to be a person where I like to put things in what I call buckets, but they're really just categories or areas, topics, a bunch of different words you use, but I use the word buckets. And when I have bookmarks, for instance, I used to have 90 tabs open on my phone all the time, and I had to keep going in and closing them. Or I had bookmarks and I had 300 bookmarks, so it would only show 5 bookmarks and the rest you wouldn't see. And then I went in when I got a new computer. Something about getting new technology, you just want to get your life together, and you're like, this is the one, I'm going to keep everything organized. And I got a new computer, and I said, hey, let me add folders for all of my bookmarks. So what I did was all the bookmarks I had, I actually added those to like a miscellaneous folder. And I might just discard them because I don't even go inside of it anymore. But I actually created folders for different areas. So I created a folder for my job, and then inside of there, all of the tools that we use, all of the tools that we use, I created folders. And then inside of there, I actually have that's the level I went to. That's the furthest level I went to, because if I went anything beyond that, it would be over organized. And over organization literally defeats the purpose of organization, because it's hard to find things a lot of times. You don't know where to go. So you want to organize it just enough where I like to do the 2 level deep, or 1 level deep, I guess in this case, but 2 levels deep, where I have work stuff, and then I have inside of there, I have it split up by whatever the application is, or whatever you want to split it up by, just something to help you out. So we are organized people. we are good. We can set budgets, we can set schedules, we can set rules, we can keep things organized, but we can only maximize this if we reel it in. We know when to stop, how far to go, and we don't overload ourselves, because we always overload ourselves too. I load a lot of stuff on my plate, and it's just something about pride. I think it's what I mentioned about the fear of shame, but having all of this stuff on my back just gives me this sense of pride. Like, yeah, I'm working hard. I'm really, really working. And I think it's just that if you think if you rest, you're lazy, or if you don't come out and make all this money, you're not reaching your full potential. It's so many different things that can go on in your head. And I have to read the book. I actually got a couple books that just came in the mail for OCPD, but there was an interesting book I wanted to read about subtypes, and I want to actually do more research on these different subtypes and how they work, because I think some of them might overlap with other ones, and you might have a little bit of all of them. And I think that's probably documented, but in the book. But I want to actually read these and see how each of us kind of work differently. I'm interested in knowing it, because a lot of stuff I see in the OCPD support group, a lot of us have a lot of the same issues. But occasionally you will see people who say I'm the complete opposite, but it just links back to another issue of an OCPD trait. So it's all still OCPD, it's just we're all impacted in different ways. And I had a timer for 4:30. Why? Oh, yeah. Gotta call my father-in-law. That's what it is. All right, but yeah, that's my video. I wanted to tell my story. I talked about how I found out I had OCPD. I talked about different things that I've experienced having it. I talked about how long I potentially had it. And I also talked a little bit about my transition from just being an OCPD victim. I'm trying to find a better word for victim. I don't like that one, but somebody who suffers from it. I hate sufferers as well. Somebody who deals with OCPD to somebody who can help others who deal with OCPD. So if any of these resources, are useful for you, please let me know in the comments or share it with somebody who might have it. And if you have strategies yourself and you would like to share it, put them in here as well, because I'm always open to feedback. And as I mentioned, all of us are impacted differently. What might work for me might not work for everybody. But I do think it's worth a try for us to just hear each other out if it's an area that we want to focus on. And that's about it. As I mentioned, this is the OCPD Coach. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the comments. If you want to talk to me one-on-one or do a consultation or potentially join up in the coaching program, make sure you email me at TheOCPDCoach@gmail.com. That's all one word. And I will be catching you all next time on the OCPD Coach. Peace.